And welcome to the special weekend shortened version of the Ron Paul FLIX show. We've got a very special guest with us today, Brent Stafford. Please, Brent, introduce yourself. Tell us what you did this weekend.
Well, my name is Brent Stafford. I was at the St. Charles County Caucus, and I guess I'm famous now as the one that got arrested. I was there to try to have a fair caucus. I'm a Ron Paul supporter. I have been since the last presidential election. I was actually chairman of the St. Charles County Caucus 4 years ago. There were a whole different set of shenanigans that went on after that caucus 4 years ago. I'm also a member of the St. Charles County Republican Central Committee, I'm doing my best to become a delegate for Ron Paul and to get as many delegates for Ron Paul as possible.
Right, and at this caucus, it looked like we were going to do very well, probably pick up about half of the delegates. So other people definitely had a motivation to try and stop us in any way we could. But walk us through the opening stages of this caucus. There was a temporary chair in place. He has to nominate or open the floor for nominations for a permanent chair, and things really didn't go well at that point. Tell us what happened.
Well, before it even got to that point, they read what they referred to as the House rules. And one of the very first rules was no cameras or recording devices, and the vast majority of the people that were in attendance, I've seen estimates of 2,500 people or more, were opposed to not allowing recording, and because of their vocal opposition to banning cameras, the meeting did not start when it was supposed to, and then in fact it started over an hour after it was supposed to because the lines were so long to get registered.
So it seems very suspicious when a temporary chair of a caucus brings forth rules that were obviously written long before the caucus started, specifying cameras were not to be used, no recording equipment at all. I mean, for me, that immediately is a red flag. Why on earth would you do that? Other caucuses that we have seen, they have welcomed the recording that has taken place there because it's a level of accountability. Do you think there's some motivation behind this, some agenda? Can you tell us what you think that might be?
Yeah, I think that there was an agenda, and some various reports that have come out since the caucus seem to indicate that there was a pre-planned agenda in place, and the way things ended up happening a little bit later on in the day, through the caucus that day were planned ahead of time. I've seen, I actually saw a report just a little bit ago that some of these rules were put in place to assure that people wouldn't, be able to be elected, but that came later. The bottom line is any rules governing the body of the caucus can only be decided, implemented, and approved by the body of the caucus. The Central Committee people in charge of organizing the caucus, they're not the ones that set the rules for the caucus. Once the caucus is commenced, the rules are not. The only rules that are in place are Robert's Rules of Order.
Right.
The caucus is a standalone body, separate from the county committee. The county committee is tasked with organizing the location and getting the registration information from the voter logs from the county election authority, so they can verify people are valid.
Right. And Brent, you've been very involved locally in politics. People knew that you were going to be running for the permanent chair of this caucus. People came expecting that, prepared for that. You came prepared and expecting to nominate yourself and run as the permanent chair. When you tried to do that, though, you were basically blocked from doing so illegally. Tell us what happened.
Well, before the caucus commenced, and before all the controversy over whether you could have cameras or not, the caucus was set to start at about we're supposed to start at 10 o'clock. And I would say around a quarter till 10 o'clock, I was approached by some Romney supporters. They didn't have full slates at that point. They were going to put up someone as a chair. We had completely full slates. Remember, at our caucus is a county caucus where we send delegates to the state convention, but we also have two separate congressional districts within our county. So we send delegates to two different congressional conventions as well. We had people in all of those slates, and so delegates to the state convention was 147, and that number of alternates, and that same number split unevenly between two district caucuses. So we had our slates full. The Romney people, they were trying to fill their slate, but they were going to put up someone for chairman. We'd hired a parliamentarian, the president of the Missouri Association of Parliamentarians. We had a proposed set of rules that we were going to ask the delegation to debate and approve. So the decision was made that they would not submit someone for chair. The Romney campaign would back me to be the chairman, and then they kept to that.
Okay, so you got together with the Romney people, and you both decided that you would become the permanent chair, which is very unusual. I mean, there's been some talk in the media about the campaigns working together, but of course at this level of the campaign, that's not happening. But here in the caucus, you got together and found that you had some common ground, and you would become the permanent chair. They would become one of their people would become the secretary. So now it was up for you to nominate yourself on the caucus floor. When you tried to do that, what happened?
Well, yeah, and there were some other issues from the temporary chair prior to that, because it should be that the very first order of business that the temporary chair conducts is the election of the permanent chair. And then there's a second election for secretary, and then the permanent chair appoints a parliamentarian, a credentials committee, and a rules committee, and sergeant of arms if needed.
And that would have been your role. But when you tried to get the nomination for the permanent chair, what happened on the caucus floor?
Well, when he opened up nominations, I immediately began attempting to nominate myself. I said, I nominate Brent Stafford, and I said it, multiple times, and I wasn't being adversarial, but I was making sure that he could absolutely hear me. I know he heard me. A woman stepped in front of me, and the temporary chair, his name is Eugene Dokes, who's also the chair of the St. Charles County's GOP Something Committee. He called her by name to recognize her, and she nominated Matt Ellman, and he asked for a second, and someone else seconded. Now, the thing that everyone needs to understand is when you're having nominations from the floor, you do not have to be recognized by the chair prior to making your nomination, and your nomination does not have to be seconded. So I continued to make my nomination heard loud and clear. When it became obvious he was ignoring me, other people began attempting to nominate me as well. Eventually, the entire auditorium, I can't say all 100%, but it was probably at least 2/3 or more of the people in the gymnasium all started trying to nominate me at the same time. So there's actually a chant started that lasted maybe 20-30 seconds. People saying, Brent Stafford, Brent Stafford.
So you've got all of the Romney people and all of the Ron Paul people that have already agreed to nominate you as the chair. And so the whole place is in an uproar, and yet they're still not going to hear you.
No, that's absolutely right. The entire, well, again, I can't say entire because it wasn't 100%, but it was obvious that.
But a good majority of the people there.
It was the loudest, event of the day was the attempt to nominate me, and again, that was ignored. And what he did do then was he said, "All in favor of Matt Ellman, say aye." And there were a few ayes. All opposed, say no. And there was an immense no. And he said, "The ayes have it. Matt Ellman is now the chair of.
So the temporary chair carries the motion through with a minority of the vote.
Well, no one knows for sure because he called for a voice vote. It seemed apparent that that he called it in opposite of what the voice vote appeared to be. Immediately, I started calling for division. Other people started calling for division. There were numbers of calls for division. Division is a request that one person can make. Any one person can make. They do not have to be recognized by the chair. It doesn't have to have a second, and it must be acted on. And what a division is basically count the vote.
Right.
And
is that anybody can do that? So anybody who's in the caucus at all can yell out, whether the front or the back, and yell out division. And immediately at that point, caucus must stop and they must bring that motion to a ballot. And they didn't do that, did they?
Absolutely not. They ignored all. They ignored the only parliamentary motions that they heard was their pre-selected person to make the nomination for their chair, and then later on they made a motion to close the caucus. But all other parliamentary inquiries and motions were ignored by both the permanent chair. Well, I don't think that the temporary chair. I don't think the permanent chair ever actually got a chance to entertain a motion, but the temporary chair made clear he was not going to hear any motions.
Okay. So the people in this caucus were obviously very upset. They wouldn't permit the recording, although people recorded surreptitiously anyway, which is good because we have some of that footage as you can see now on the screen. And more rule breaking occurred. They didn't follow parliamentary procedure in electing all of the parliamentary spots. And eventually the police are called because the chair leaves the room, calls the police, and 4 different sectors of the police force come. Why on earth did they call the police?
Well, actually they called the police earlier, before they had the election of the chair and before the temporary chair made the committee appointments and the parliamentary appointments, which were out of order. That's not his job. They had actually called the police in prior to that when they were demanding that everyone turn off their cameras, and they weren't going to reconvene. They weren't going to commence the meeting again until everyone had. And people were being very vocal in their opposition to not allowing recording. And
okay, so people were being vocal, but there were no threats of violence against the chair or anybody else in the caucus, were there?
No.
No, so there was really no need for the police. And it got to the point where we can see a clip now of a helicopter overhead. I mean, this is like a terrorist attack that is taking place here. The number of police is baffling.
I want to make a few things clear, okay? Number one, I've not seen any report of anyone who said that they were physically threatened or anyone who witnessed anyone being physically aggressive. Okay, I've not seen any of that. I didn't see it in person, and I haven't heard a single report of that since. Second, to be clear, the police were called in to reestablish order when there was the outburst of emotion over the video recordings. The police took up positions throughout the gymnasium and in some cases prevented people from trying to make motions to the chair in a show of force. There were apparently 4 different police jurisdictions.
Now wait a minute. Are you telling me, Brent, that the police were stopping the caucus activity from taking place?
They were not allowing people to step onto the floor to be recognized. I know in one case I was trying to be recognized by the chair, and the police officer stood directly in front of me to block my view of the chair and from the podium, and also the view of me from the podium. I moved back and forth, and he would mirror my movements. I think, I don't think the police even understood that this is a meeting where you have interaction from the body. I think they maybe thought it was a speech or something. I don't know, but.
So you've got a police officer shadowing you in front of you stopping you from being able to participate in the caucus?
At one point. But again, I want to make sure I'm not misrepresenting anything to anyone, okay? The police were there. They were brought in to make sure everyone's cameras were turned off, okay? And if they refused to turn off their cameras, then they would be arrested for trespassing. And that did happen to one gentleman, but it didn't happen then, okay? He turned off his camera. Now we move forward a little bit, and when some of the actions of the chair that were the temporary chair that were in violation of the proper procedures, that gentleman turned his camera back on because now it's obvious that they were violating a number of rules and he wanted to document it. He was an obvious target because he was probably the only one there that had a tripod to put his camera on, so he was a very obvious target. That whole thing with the helicopter, I want to be clear, wasn't until later. The additional, there was over 20 police in the gymnasium to prevent people from recording, but there were even more police that were brought in later on after the caucus was improperly adjourned. I mean, we can talk about how that all happened.
So do you feel that the police were helping the situation? Do you feel that they were causing some intimidation to the people that were at the caucus?
Well, they were definitely intimidating people who were attending. I do not know that they understood what the caucus is about and how a caucus is conducted and that there is participation from the body. They immediately were basically just taking their orders from the caucus organizers and doing whatever they said. And the caucus organizers, were clearly trying to rig the process. That's without a doubt.
Okay, and then this got to a point where obviously there was going to be no progress in the caucus. People were demanded they had to leave the building, and the police started threatening people with arrest if they did not leave. Right.
What happened with that is that the permanent chair who was improperly elected tried to gain order, and the body of the caucus was not accepting him as a valid chair because of the way he was put in place with ignoring further nominations and not having division, etc. So they pretty much were not recognizing him. So he took it upon himself to adjourn the meeting with a pretty fake little voice vote, which would have required a 2/3 vote to adjourn the way he did, and he didn't do it. So immediately then they adjourned the meeting. I'd hired this parliamentarian who was not allowed in the room.
So let me just interrupt you and step back a bit there. They're adjourning the meeting, yet no delegates have been selected at all. Is that correct?
No. Right. They hadn't even elected the secretary for the caucus at this point. There was no discussion of delegates. There was no discussion of the party platform. Those are the two orders of business that are required by the call to caucus.
Let me ask you, if no delegates are selected at this caucus, how does the GOP select those delegates to go to the state convention?
Right now, if nothing changes, and I'm confident there will be some changes, but right now there would be 0 delegates from St. Charles County. You have to understand this also, okay? Even with all the shenanigans that they pulled, they did not elect a secretary. They didn't even fake elect a secretary. It's the secretary has to be on the documents to be submitted to the state. So they cannot even submit fake documents to the state because there was never a secretary elected.
So when everybody was asked to leave the building, you brought with you a highly skilled parliamentarian.
Right, so but before we were asked to leave the gymnasium, I went to the podium to try to reconvene the meeting. And I stepped to the microphone and I told people, do not leave. We're going to try to reconvene this meeting. Business was not conducted. We have every right and the parliamentary ability to reconvene this meeting. And I had this professional registered parliamentarian who was there to help assure that we did it in the proper fashion. When I was making that address to the body, the previous temporary chair, Eugene Dokes, the county Central Committee chair, unplugged the microphone so I could no longer address the body. At that point, police started ordering everyone to leave the gymnasium or they would be arrested for trespassing.
That's just unbelievable. So they pull your mic, they stop you from being able to do anything inside. You leave the building with everybody else. People start to congregate around you because they know who you are, and you have this highly trained parliamentarian with you, so he will make sure all the rules are in check. You find a chair, I believe, and you stand up on it and start to address the crowd. And we're looking at some of that footage here right now. But in a minute, we're going to see the police come up to you and start to speak to you. What did the police have to say?
Well, they basically said, you know, get down, come with us, is what they said. But I have to also, I want to make sure everyone understands, there is what's called a called caucus. And that called caucus must be published 15 days prior to the caucus. It has the time, date, and location of the caucus. Some people wanted to go to an adjacent or nearby park to reconvene the meeting. That was not permissible. That was not in the call to caucus. We had to caucus at that high school. We were now outside. The call to caucus did not say a specific room. So we were still within the call to caucus. So I immediately tried to reconvene the caucus at the location that is the only location that was permitted. Okay. And the first thing that you have to do is you have to establish a roster of eligible participants.
Okay.
So I was explaining what we had to do ad hoc to create a roster that would be valid and meet certain criteria.
Right, and that's what we see here. You're asking people here to write down their names, address, telephone number, and the number that they were given on the bracelet that they had put on their arm when they came in.
Right. When you registered and you checked in, you were given a bracelet, and there's a number on the bracelet that was also written on your registration form. So by recording that information, those people, had already been validated as valid.
Right. So once you had done that, you would have legally been able to reconvene the caucus and start proceedings, correct?
That was my intention.
Okay, but then the police come up, and we see here that they're walking you away from the crowd. People are not very happy about it, and they're arresting you right here. What on earth are they arresting you for? What was the charge?
Well, I asked them, I said, what's going on? And I said, we'll tell you, we're not going to tell you right now, we'll tell you in a little bit or something to that effect. And they put my hands behind my back and handcuffed me and started walking me towards where they had all their squad cars. And there was one, in fact, I guess a paddy wagon that was there. And as we're walking, there were some people that were kind of tagging along. They're like, what are you being charged with? And I would ask the police officer, what am I being charged with? We'll tell you later. And then the guy's like, are you being arrested or detained? And I said to the police officer, am I being arrested or detained? We'll tell you about that later. And there was no charge. I wasn't being told anything. They put me in the paddy wagon. I sat there for a while. They had myself and the other gentleman who was arrested for trespassing for having a video camera, eventually trespassing. We were in the little paddy wagon together. They held us there until they dispersed all the rest of the crowd, and they put us in the squad cars and took us to the St. Peter's police station. Eventually, we were cited for trespassing.
And they actually put you in handcuffs. I guess they just used the twisty ties around your...
No? They used the twisty ties on Kenneth Suter initially. They later, because they were over tight, took them off and used regular handcuffs. On me, they were just the regular handcuffs the whole time.
Wow. All right, so where do we go from here now? We need to put 15 days notice in a newspaper to reconvene a caucus. That's the first step. But do you have hope that a caucus can be reconvened and we can actually move forward with this?
Well, the Missouri State GOP has made a statement that they regret what happened and that they want to work with all of the parties involved to come to some kind of conclusion. Any suggestion that we do some kind of proportional delegation based on the straw poll that the Central Committee conducted as people were coming in is not going to be acceptable, because they never released those numbers. No one from the other parties were allowed to, not when I say parties, other candidates or the various candidates, were allowed to watch the actual counting of these ballots, which were not even really supposed to take place under the party rules. So there's no way to know whether they were counted accurately, whether between yesterday and whatever else happens, they don't throw things away. There's no way to guarantee any kind of accuracy. So the only really fair and option would be to reconvene a caucus, and I believe that's something that is being looked at.
All right, Brent, keep in touch and let us know what happens there. We want to make sure we follow up, and I hope this caucus does get to reconvene. Do you have any advice for others? Because this is kind of happening around other places as well. Maybe not as serious as what happened there in Missouri, but definitely other caucuses are being obstructed in other ways. What advice can you give to other people to try and prevent this from happening?
Well, the first thing is know the rules for your state and your caucus before you go. We knew the rules inside and out. There's when you have a chair that's going to ignore parliamentary procedure and ignore the party rules and just wants to do things their own way, the best thing to do would be to document it. So take the cameras out. If for some reason that you absolutely can't, have a notepad and write down every violation and what time it occurred and file challenges. But the main thing is know the rules, make them abide by them, and don't give up your rights.
Right.
I mean, I was arrested. I wasn't trying to win anything for me. I was trying to have a fair caucus for everyone. And it was going to be a challenge thing if we were able to have that caucus outside. It was not going to be the ideal situation, but the bottom line is we were trying to follow rules, and I did what I felt was right, and I was arrested for it. I think it was improper the way I was arrested, but I believe 100% that I did the right thing.
It was definitely improper, and we've all got your back. We all appreciate you coming on the show and sharing this. We look forward to following up with you, and I'm sure that you will beat those charges as well. In fact, I'm looking forward to those being dropped very soon. I'm sure that will happen. Do you have any other parting thoughts?
Just never back down for the cause of liberty. Just do what you can and don't retreat.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Brent. Real pleasure to have you on the show today, and I'll be right back with a special announcement right after this.
America is in trouble.
Washington is a disgrace.
Government has become too big. It's overtaxing, overspending.
We need to change direction.
We really need change.
We can't afford to make the same mistakes we've made in the past.
Mitt Romney's reputation as a flip-flopper.
He went the other way when he got paid to go the other way.
There is need for economic stimulus.
It's about serial hypocrisy.
This election is about trust. There's been one true consistent candidate, and that's Dr. Ron Paul.
Ron Paul has been so consistent from the very beginning.
He seems like a more honest candidate.
He tells the truth about what he believes, whether you like it or not.
He's never once voted for a tax increase, never once voted for an unbalanced budget.
Ron Paul's plan is bold, cuts 5 departments. It's what we need.
When he says he's going to cut $1 trillion in the first year, I believe it.
If you don't like how things are going and you're tired of politicians, he's something different.
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul
is the one we've been looking for.
I'm Ron Paul, and I approve this message.
And welcome back. And I wanted to announce something brand new to you today. As I'm sure you're very angry having just seen that piece with Brent, we need to get our resources together in a better way so that we can track this voter fraud. It's one of the reasons why I'm introducing a new Ron Paul site today, Ron Paul Posts. Posts, because here you can post anything you want, whether it's a video, whether it's an audio clip, whether it's a photograph, whether it's a document, or you can write your own blog. Anything you want to post, you can post here, as long as it has to do with Ron Paul. The great thing is we have a most loved section, and here you can click on things to love them instead of like them, and they will float to the top. And the things in that page, on this most loved page, will float to the top, and you will see those there. And as they get older, they will start to push down the bottom of the page as newer stuff comes up as well. Very, very clever. But we also have a section here dedicated completely to voter fraud. So get along here and you'll be able to see it all. But click here, upload content, and you can upload everything directly to the site. You can even bypass YouTube and upload video directly, and we will post that in our Ron Paul Posts YouTube channel, which we're going to be promoting a lot. And that means your video will get more views than if you uploaded it to your own channel, unless you have a very popular channel. So go along here, sign up over here, start using the site. One of the complaints about my Ron Paul FLIX site is that we're very, very selective in the videos that we put there. We only choose, you know, between 2 and 4 videos a day to put on Ron Paul FLIX. And a lot of people are kind of upset that we don't put all their videos there and things like that. Hey, I understand. And that's why I've created this as well, because here you can go and post them yourself. As soon as you post it, it's live on the site. Anybody can see it. You can get along to a video. Any video has the most amazing ability to share it anywhere you want. You can post it directly from here onto Ron Paul forums on Facebook, Twitter, Dig, and Pinterest. Strange name for a site, but we've made that really, really good. And if somebody uploads a stupid video that really shouldn't be there, then there's a little link down here, report unsuitable content. Click the link, and then we get notified that there's something there that shouldn't be there, because we're allowing all of this to go live the moment you post it, so we need something like that. If you like the video or love the video, you can come up here and click on the little heart, love. Now it's 87, and the more loves your video gets, the higher it will be ranked on the special page up here, which is the most loved. So on the most loved page, then you got a fresh page as well, which is where all the latest content is, regardless of how many loves it has. So here it'll be ranked in order of when it was uploaded. The vote fraud page, and there's a forum here as well. So if you want to chat with other people and organize things, then you will find we have a broken link. I will get to that. So Ron Paul Posts, hope you use it and put all the vote fraud stuff up there in one place. That will enable us to go to the campaign and say, here it is. It's all in one place, all documented. This is going to be a really, really good way of keeping them all accountable. RonPaulPosts.com. See you on the next show.